Hello and welcome to the National Debate. I'm Madhavdas G, and on this edition of the debate, we put the spotlight on the one big question. Did the Modi government protect India from a global oil shock? Or did it politically postpone the burden until the elections were over? Because after 77 days of the escalating West Asia conflict and unprecedented volatility in global energy markets, India's long-held fuel price freeze has finally given way. Petrol and diesel prices have been hiked by 3 rupees per litre, marking the first major increase in over 4 years and triggering an immediate political storm across the country. Government sources say Brent crude surged sharply during the crisis and state-run oil marketing companies were collectively losing more than 1,000 crore rupees every single day, while continuing to shield customers from the full global shock. The Prime Minister is also strengthening India's long-term energy security architecture through strategic agreements signed during his UAE visit, including oil storage cooperation, LPG supply deals, and expanded participation in India's strategic petroleum reserves. But the opposition has mounted a fierce counter-attack, with Congress labelling it a Modi-made crisis and other opposition parties accusing the government of politically timing the hike after polls. So the debate is no longer just about increase in fuel prices. It's about how the world's fastest growing major economy balances political optics, inflation pressures, energy security, and the realities of an increasingly unstable global oil order. Joining us here in the studio to discuss that and more, we have Siddharth Yadav, spokesperson of the BJP. Also with us is Deepthi Taneja, professor of DU, economist and geopolitical expert. We also have Dr. P.K. Basu, economist, joining us here. We have Advocate Vikas Gupta, political analyst. Advocate Anmol Pawar is a spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party. Vivek Silas is national spokesperson of Samajwadi Party. And Dr. Pula Rao is a political analyst joining us. Let's quickly take this across to the first point that we're looking at, what really has happened over the last 24 hours and what's been the background of this. Now, clearly, was a fuel price hike inevitable? Comes the first big question, because it's about 30,000 crore rupees of loss per month, which in about 77 days is about as many crores, roughly. Total loss in one quarter is around 1 lakh crore rupees. That's the projected sale loss as far as petrol, diesel and LPG is concerned. The loss to fuel retailers is at 20 rupees a litre on petrol. What is the other aspects that we need to look at? In fact, 100 rupees a litre on diesel is the loss that is expected as far as diesel is concerned. Let's quickly bring up the next slide very quickly. If we can get what the government is saying as far as the fuel price hike is concerned. And this is, of course, more in terms of what one will have to shell out. 3 rupees more, of course, at fuel pumps, and why this was inevitable. Larger reasons, of course, being the war-related global oil disruption, ongoing conflict which has pushed crude oil prices up. That's, of course, inevitable. Many say OMCs are now facing heavy losses. That's the oil marketing companies which have been absorbing losses for the past 70-odd days. What is the next aspect of this? Part of this burden is also now being passed on to the consumer. It was not done so far. There's also the higher import cost of crude, which has now happened. India depends heavily on imported crude oil for its energy requirements, and that's what's really led to the current situation where the global crude price hike had to impact eventually on what domestic consumers pay. There is also the aspect of the weak rupee plus the tighter supply, which is leading to more expensive fuel for the consumers at the moment. Let's also look at what the prices were earlier and what they are now. In Delhi, it was 94.77 rupees. It's 97.77, about a 3 rupee increase. In Kolkata, it's 105.45 rupees, now at 108.74, plus 3.29 increase. In Mumbai, 103.54 was the earlier price, now at 106.68. That's an increase of 3.14 rupees. In Chennai, 100.84, now going up to 103.67, or an increase of 2.83. Let's quickly open this up and take it across to our panelists joining us. Siddharth Yadav, we can start with you. The opposition is starting out to say that this has been politically timed, that the reason the government didn't hike it like many other countries earlier was because of the 5 state polls which have just been concluded. Is there any truth in their arguments when you look at the timing?
Good evening, Madhav. Good evening to all your viewers. I think this is one crisis, a global crisis, where at least the opposition today should stop doing politics, speak on facts, come together as a country. I would want to start off by saying this. If the government was able to resist for 2.5 months, not pass on the burden to the people, not pass on to the burden to the common man, is it to the disadvantage of the government or to the advantage of the government? If the government's economic situation is that bright that we can hold on to that pressure for more than 2 months, and we resist the pressure until we can, and later on also we are passing on the pressure in a very staged manner. This is the 3 rupee hike is not leveling out what the pressure the government is facing today. It is not, it has not brought us to a break-even situation. But it is, a matter of priority for the government that we are saying that this is a global crisis. But the solution has to be Indian. We have to protect Indian consumers until we can. And while we do that, this has to be dealt in a manner which is most safe and comfortable for the Indian people. Now, in the 2 months, we had seen that there were situations where hormuz could have opened, the war could have stopped, the government was watching out. It's a global crisis. It could not happen, and now we have to resort to this. But I would wish to add, the figures that you were showing on your screen should add 2 more figures. The prices of oil in Hyderabad and the prices of oil in Bengaluru. Because for the information of your viewers, the prices in Hyderabad are the highest today. Not ruled by a BJP. Prices in Bangalore, number 2.
I'm going to come to that.
Not ruled by BJP.
That's a very important political point.
I'll just take 10 seconds to sum up. From 24 until now, the prices were stable. The government cut down 10 rupees each on petrol and diesel on excise.
There's a lot to debate in what you just said. There are at least 4 or 5 debating points in what you just said. But let me get a counter, in fact, from the opposition. Anmol Pawar, I want you to respond to him because he's saying the government, there was a lot of uncertainty. Even Trump said the war is going to last 15 days. It's stretched out to 77 days. Even now, we don't know when the war will end. So what the government and the BJP are saying is that, look here, we've eased the pain of the Aam Aadmi for as long as is possible. Now we are looking at reducing that, and in fact, it's going to happen in a calibrated manner, only 3 rupees now, which nowhere covers the kind of losses that the oil marketing companies actually face. Respond to him.
The BJP spokesperson said that it's a global crisis, but the biggest crisis this country is facing is Bharatiya Janta Party. He said that we resisted the pressure until we can, and he also said that India depends on import. Certainly 85% of our petrol comes from the import. But the point is, I'll give you some facts. In 2008, the crude oil price was $140 per barrel. Petrol ka daam tha 35 rupees. In 2014, the crude oil price was $110 per barrel. Petrol ka price tha 71 rupees. In 2016, this crude oil was $44 per barrel. Petrol tha 80. 2020 mein, during lockdown, इंटरनेशनल क्रूड ऑयल प्राइस वाज $20 पर बैरल और हमारे देश के तेल का दाम 100 रुपए पार कर गया था। तो जब सस्ता हो तो ऑयल कंपनियां और इनके पूंजीपति दोस्त फायदा उठाएं, और महंगा हो तो हमारी जेब काट लो, हमारा खून चूस लो। सेकेंडली, 2023-5-2012, Prime Minister of our country says massive hike in petrol price is an example of failure of government. 24-5-2012, he promised, he said VAT rates on petrol in opposition ruled states are higher than in Gujarat. And in 2014, after coming into power, he said since we formed the government, petrol and prices came down and will reduce VAT also. Assam 21 rupees VAT, Bihar 26 rupees VAT, Goa 19 rupees VAT, MP 31 rupees VAT, Maharashtra 29 rupees VAT, Odisha 27 rupees VAT, Rajasthan 31 रुपए वैट। किसी राज्य में वैट नहीं घटाया इन्होंने। 16 बार they have hiked excise duty for 16 times. They are telling that within
पंजाब में वैट
10 seconds.
पंजाब में वैट
पंजाब में 17 10 seconds. 10 seconds. In last 10 years they have increased excise duty by 16 times. The petroleum minister was saying that we are incurring a loss of 1,000 crores per day, but he failed to inform the citizens that in last 10 years they have earned 26 lakh 68 crore 650 rupees. वो कहाँ गया पैसा?
On a lighter note,
चुनाव के बाद ही आ गया।
on a lighter note, between the two of you, you have exhausted all the graphics that. Just a second, calm down, Anmol Pawar. No, on a lighter note, I'm just saying that between the two of you, exhausted all the points that my producers very painstakingly made. But one by one, I want you to answer the point that does the opposition have a point when the prices internationally come down? Then that advantage is not passed on to the consumer. When the prices go up, only then the consumer has to pay. Now, is there some logic in that argument?
No logic, Madhav. Madhav, we don't live in isolation. We don't live in a bubble. We are a country. BJP was not in power from eternity. We came into power in 2014. What did we inherit? 1,34,348 crores of oil bonds. Why don't you speak about that? What was that? When between 2007 to 2013, when you were not making any provision from the budget, but rather giving subsidies and giving pressure on the oil companies, just adding to the oil bonds by thinking that we will go out of power, the next government has to inherit and they will solve this problem. We solved this problem. How do we solve this problem? If I have to quote a prime minister, I'll quote Congress's prime minister, Manmohan Singh ji. Paise ped pe nahi ugte hain. How do you solve this problem? Over the years, we have paid 83,000 crores of interest in oil bonds. Given to us by whom? UPA. If we are making infrastructure in this country, if we are doing a capex at 10 lakh crores, if we are building, which in their times was below 1 lakh crore, how do we do it?
But many will ask, agar sadak bana lo, but if there's no cars that you can run with the fuel on those roads, then what will you do with those roads?
ऐसा है नहीं. गाड़ियां पहले से ज्यादा है.
गाड़ियां पहले से ज्यादा है.
2014 से. मतलब ये hypothetical situations कैसे हो सकती है?
But petrol cannot be there. Okay, but Vikas, answer the point that the oil bonds, the kind of bleeding that happened of the economy during UPA years, it's the NDA government that has had to fulfill that or repair all those issues. Respond to it.
Madhav, at the very beginning of this war, you remember you and me that we had participated in similar debate where BJP and their sympathizers refused to admit that there is going to be an energy crisis in this country. You can play out that episode, you will find their spokesperson and their sympathizer talking on those lines that everything is else rubbish, just keep quiet, there's nothing, there's no energy crisis. We've had major crises in previous years, if you recollect that. I will not name the spokesperson who was there at that point. You know what baffles me is that what is the point in going aggressive on a TV show? Most important is that what is the roadmap ahead of us? We all understand that the prices are high. I also understand the point that in last 11 years, the government has collected in excise more than 43 lakhs crores, you know. I also understand the point that when the petrol was pegged at $20, it was still sold at 100. When it was 30, it was still. So that entire money went into, and I'm not an economics teacher, probably the two economists would be able to throw light on that, whether that provision was made in part of the budget or was it kept out of the budget, the excess of money collected through petrol hikes in terms of excise duty. Was it accounted in the budget or was it kept out of the budget? I really have no idea about it, you know. Secondly,
no, the excise, they can't keep it out of the budget possibly. That's the government of India. It's a consolidated fund of the government of India. How can they keep it out of it?
The differential price, because the price today is 20 and you continue to sell at 100 rupees. I really have no idea.
Let the economists respond to that.
Let me
just you've asked two very important points. Deepti Taneja, would like to take that and come to you also, Professor Basu.
Yeah. So first answering Vikas Ji's point. So what he was talking about is how can it be out of the budget? That's a very, I'm sorry to say, that's a very silly point. That's the differential is exactly the excise that has been there, and that was factored in with just two things. To add on to Siddharth's point, he just told you that how much we had to pay in terms of the oil bonds interest. To add on to that, just to give you a comparative figure, we were doing an infrastructure at the rate of almost 3 lakh crores per annum in 2014, which went up to 17 lakh crores. So all these bullet jackets, Rafale, the defense budget, everything that you're talking about, all that was being funded through this 43 lakh crores that Sir talked about through the revenue. So this revenue was definitely accounted for, not just accounted for, but also being used for the country's growth. And now, since you were talking about the election timings, just giving you two small figures. In 2008, when the economic subprime crisis in America happened, and that led on to the oil shock. So I'll just give you a comparative figure then. $67 per barrel was the oil then, which immediately went on to $147 per barrel. At that time, it was UPA. It was not the NDA Sarkar there. At that point in time, 45.5 per litre was the domestic petrol, and it went on to 50.5 after a good gap of 1.5 months. So what was the point then? So that Sarkar was also at that point in time trying to give a cushion to the government, which is to the public, which is what this government has done. Cut to 2022, when we have the NDA Sarkar and the Russia-Ukraine war broke out. At that point also, the dollar immediately jumped up from $78 per barrel to $130 per barrel. At that point also, the government took 1 month to increase the price by 10 rupees per litre on the petrol, and then in May they again reduced it by 8 rupees per litre. So in May there was no election, because if you look at the election timings, all the major states, Uttarakhand, UP, all of them had gone into elections in February 2022, and then in December 2022 we were to face elections for Gujarat, Delhi and Himachal. So where was this May timing then? So you just cannot pass on a narrative. Facts and figures speak for themselves.
Vivek Salis, I would like Vivek to comment on this. Now, this whole narrative, of a certain political reasoning for it. She has given you two examples, UPA government 2008 and 2022, where she says, that takes time. Governments can't act in a knee-jerk fashion. It takes a month or two before you actually pass that on. And even when you pass it on, it's on a phased manner. Respond to her.
No, I can just remind the people and your viewers that we were talking about at the time of COVID, it came down to $20 per barrel, But I would like to remind the people and to you as well that 21 days at a stretch at that time in June, the oil prices kept on increasing. That was done by the Bharatiya Janta Party. Siddharth Yadav was talking about 1.3 lakh crores of oil bonds in 2014, right? But as rightly said by some of the panelists, that this government earned 43 lakhs crore. If you compare, 1.3 lakhs crore to 43 lakhs crore, it's nothing, That is, the people of the country have already paid, 20 times more than what was the all bonds at that time. Now the problem is, in India today is, I'm concerned more about the diesel prices, because it hits our farmers first, then our transportation and fishermen as well. Okay. Fishermen go to the sea, they use the diesel in their boats to fish around. So these things are going to hit the economy. And today I must also remind last 30 seconds that the case in the US has been withdrawn, the Adani's case has been withdrawn, and he has to invest $10 billion in the US.
Fuel?
Yes, I'm telling you why. It is interconnected, because I'm telling you, it was the American pressure that we stopped buying oil from Iran. It was the American pressure that we almost stopped or lessened our, buying oil from Russia.
Manmohan Singh regime. Was it during 2012 that you stopped buying oil from Iran? No. What does that have to do with
the main point at the moment is, after 2014 till date, today we are in a debt of 225 lakh crores, and we are paying 9 lakh crore per annum as interest. That is hitting the economy, and that has been a failed policy of the Bharatiya Janta Party.
Okay. I don't know which is the point that you have to debate, but I think one point that he is making is this, that at that point of time, there was a lot of political opposition whenever there were petrol price hikes, LPG price hikes during the UPA regime. So one of his arguments, if I've understood it, is that you're talking about the 1 lakh crores or 1.5 lakh crores that he refers to as those fuel bonds, etc., oil bonds, etc. But what about the 43 lakh crores that have been collected by the current regime of the past 12 years? Is there a comparison there?
Look, the simple fact is that India is a net importer of oil. We're a massive net importer of oil. And so I think a prudent policy, an economic policy, is one where oil prices are kept relatively high so that you deter oil consumption, oil and gas consumption, fossil fuel consumption, and encourage people to move to other renewable energy over time. And that is basically the policy of this government. Now, I think it's important to remember that at the end of March this year, excise duties were cut by 10 rupees per litre on both petrol and diesel. So in fact, that benefit, you see that the benefit of reduced excise duties actually went to the oil marketing companies.
Yes.
We are seeing oil marketing companies crying.
But that's
now.
a good point. Why should not go to the consumers like it has in certain countries? This is what opposition is saying actually.
You don't pass it to a consumer for the simple reason that we are a massive net importer of oil. We do not want, as a country, it is appropriate and the approach should be to ensure that oil prices stay relatively high relative to other prices so that people move away from fossil fuels. To the extent that we can replace fossil fuels with biodiesel, with other sources of energy, and with renewables, we should do that. Now, so that is the main purpose. So I'm not defending the government here. What I'm saying is that it is more prudent to do this than to have big oil subsidies like you've had in past governments. The reason why we had that massive problem with oil marketing bonds, which was 3% of GDP, the size of it was humongous. 3% of GDP was the burden left by the UPA2 on the NDA government. So that had to be borne over time. And part of the way that was borne by this government is by keeping oil prices relatively high, and using excise duties. Now, the interesting thing is, excise duties were kept high even when oil prices fell. You know, this $20 a barrel thing that people talk about with COVID, that lasted barely a month and a half, if that. Okay, it was a very brief period of very low oil prices, and then the economy globally began to recover.
We look at all those aspects.
Let's not just keep going back to the 20. Yeah. That's a very brief episode, and it is a good thing. A prudent government would not simply cut oil prices.
Well, maybe the $20 per barrel was a low period, but the relative gap is also there.
But I demonstrate all of that.
Let me just quickly come in before I go across to Mr. Pullara. I want to quickly look at what the global prices have been and where it's increased globally when it comes to, you know, the fuel price is concerned. India, of course, has seen 3.2 as far as petrol is concerned in terms of percentage, diesel 3.5. Myanmar is looking at petrol in terms of an increase of 89.7%, diesel at 112.7%. Let's take a look at other countries. Malaysia, for instance, an increase of 56.3% petrol, diesel 71.2. The next country, we can quickly bring that up, Pakistan, of course, 54.9% petrol, 44.9% diesel. UAE, petrol 52.4% increase, diesel 86.1% increase. United States, 44.5% petrol increase, 48.1% diesel increase. United Kingdom, 19.2% petrol increase, diesel 34.2% increase. France is looking at 20.9% petrol increase, diesel 31.0%. We're also looking at Germany, 13.7% here for petrol, 19.8% here for diesel. So these are some of the countries, of course, in the global impact as far as fuel prices is concerned. What really has been looked at in terms of measures at rationing fuel? Work from home, shorter weeks. This is what Indonesia, Myanmar, who've pushed remote work. Pakistan and Philippines have adopted 4-day weeks. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh have trimmed the school schedules. Cooling curbs. In Thailand and Bangladesh, they've capped the AC temperatures. Jordan has banned ACs in government offices. Public transport push in many countries as well. Lithuania has cut train fares by 50%. Philippines offers free bus rides. France has backed affordable EV leasing, for instance. Governments have also cut official travel. South Korea has imposed driving curbs. Jordan and Pakistan have restricted foreign trips. Sri Lanka has urged officials to use public transport as well. Other energy-saving campaigns in Australia, for instance, which have launched, every little bit helps. Egypt has cut lighting and shop timings. Vietnam, Ethiopia have urged citizens to conserve power. So all of these measures, Mr. Pullara, are not happening in the vacuum. When the Prime Minister urges citizens to not spend on forex, not spend on petrol, to try and cap whatever spending they can put on gold, it's not without example, because globally, that's what all other countries are doing. Mr. Pullara.
See, the base there is very low. You can't compare the US income with Indian income. The base of the price was very low, therefore the increase sounds very much. But let me go back to one point. What the Aam Aadmi Party gentleman said is correct. You have deregulated oil pricing in 2010. And since 2014, when this government took over, the oil prices miraculously fell and continued for 15 years. Yet they did not go back to deregulated price. They burden this country. There is no audit of the public sector oil companies. Where has some of this money gone? You'll be amazed. There's no time to say where all they've spent this money. Adventurous investments they have done.
He says 10 lakh crores in a year that have been spent on infrastructure have come from there. That's what he's just said.
Let me tell you one more thing also. You know, when even Pakistan is doing better than us. The solar energy.
They're doing better than us.
5 years.
Are you serious? You're saying Pakistan doing better than us? How?
Almost bankrupt. That is an almost bankrupt nation. Let's get your act together here.
One by one. Okay, let the lady speak. I'm coming to you.
I am very surprised. I am very surprised at the kind of figures that are being rolled out right now. What is the use of percentage? If they are talking about the fact that base kam hai, अरे भाई base kam hai, तभी तो percentage में बात हो रही है. Which is why the normalization principle, percentage principle. I mean, this is basic maths. I don't need to teach you, sir. Sorry. Then coming on to whatever they've been saying again and again, that where has that money been spent? I just gave you the figures. 2014, when we had 3 lakh crore spending on the, which is just 2.2% of GDP, spending on the infrastructure, which has now risen to 4.8% of GDP, 17 lakh crores.
Right.
Where has that money come from? Right. That money has come from this. Then again, the gentleman here told me that tax, मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा, again a very very surprising figure, कि हमारा debt बढ़ गया है, हमने इतने करोड़ का debt ले लिया है. Dude, again again, percentage have been made for a reason. 2014, our debt GDP ratio, because the GDP has also doubled in the same period. Our debt GDP ratio was 10.1%, which is at 11.8% now. So, which is a very fairly good figure if you look at the economies. जो Pakistan से compare किया, Pakistan is 80% debt GDP ratio. So, where are the percentages? What are these gentlemen talking about?
Why
I'm surprised.
80% debt
Basic
GDP
economics, basic stats, basic maths.
That is the beginning of the war itself, work from
Let
home,
me tell you one thing.
stay at
You're
home.
going from the beginning of the war and justifying misgovernance. February 28th, when the war started, suddenly you find you have not diversified your oil supply. Government
How can they,
Oh my God.
want them to diversify? One
Government
second. You want the government to have diversified its oil supply
Before
at the
that-
beginning of the war itself.
Before the
How
war,
do you know they have not done that?
Before the war, why didn't they anticipate it? Who,
They should
am I the
anticipate the
minister?
war.
Are you the
They have
minister?
done it
There was
before the
failure
war,
of
Madhav.
governance. There was failure of governance.
Okay, this is failure of governance. Okay, let's go
You
one
have
by
to
one. Let's go one by
respond
one.
to
This is failure of governance, he says. You should have diversified your oil supplies even before the war began. You should have known what was coming. Respond.
This is on the presumption that we did not. We are taking oil from 40 countries. How many countries we were taking under UPA rule?
Where were you getting your LPG from? You had no arrangement.
Sir,
You had
simple
no way
question I have
with
asked.
USA.
I am not debating
you
with you,
failed.
sir.
You must
Sir, I am
take
not
that
debating.
policy
You
failure,
can't go
my
on the
friend.
rhetoric.
You can't brush this over.
Sir, you
The
can
public
complete
is
it.
suffering.
I think
So
the
bad
learned
governance.
okay.
Bad governance.
Advice that we should
Public
go
is suffering.
Let's get a response. Let's get a response. He's asked you a factual question. How many countries, you say that they were not diversified. How many countries were the previous regime under the UPA actually getting oil from? Respond to his
How
point
many
factually.
countries are you getting LPG from? Other than
You have to answer it.
Parameter has changed.
Madhav, I'll give you the data.
Parameters have changed now.
21 in UPA, 27 before the war, 40 right at the war in
43 now.
43 now.
43 now.
We are diversifying. We are making new MOUs. We are taking LPG from countries like Canada, where we have never taken before. We are opening new channels. The country is doing everything. But I think one thing that has to be noted here, the kind of figures that you were showing, the increase in US, the increase in UK, the increase in Germany, you should also show one parameter, I think I'll request your producer, of how their opposition is reacting. Where there's a 80% increase, you will not see an opposition like this. While you are seeing one in India with 3% increase.
That's okay. That's okay. They have a right to speak.
Madhav,
They have a right.
Madhav, I'm making a political point. I'm sorry, but I'm making a political point.
But even
The
BJP
need of-
opposed when UPA
the
government was
need-
there. That is their right to oppose,
Madhav,
yeah.
Madhav, please allow me to make this point. The need of the hour is, the Honorable Prime Minister has made an appeal. It is a war, a global crisis. The solution can be Indian solution. All of us have to come together.
Okay.
Which part of this we don't understand?
Can I-
I don't know.
Okay.
This is not a war
I'm
which
not
is
war.
started
Okay,
by
come on,
us.
Madhav.
This is not manufactured by us. We will solve this for ourselves and for the world.
Okay, Anwar Pawar, respond to that.
Madhav Ji, I'll make 2 points. Stock market explains how economy is performing. Stock market of India is growing at -8% per annum. Pakistan 45%, America 24%, Canada 35%,
Give you the data.
China
Pakistan.
90%, and
Why
Singapore
is this love with
24%.
Pakistan?
No,
Why-
10
why so
seconds.
many panelists
10 seconds.
referring
Second
to
point.
Pakistan?
You know why this
No, but
crisis?
Anwar Pawar,
You know
what
why
is the
this
status of
crisis is
Pakistan?
happening?
What is the
Just
kind of
let
food
me-
prices over there? Why are you comparing it to Pakistan?
Let me make my
Please.
point. You know the reason of this
I think
crisis.
that's where the base should come in. The argument of base comes in when it
The
comes to
reason,
Pakistan.
the
I
re-
will-
just
I will
10
respond
seconds.
to
The
that.
reason of this crisis is because under the US pressure, Narendra Modi government has refused to buy cheaper Russian oil. We saved 3 lakh crores in last 5 years. Listen to this. Listen to this. False. Listen to this.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Make your arguments. It's okay. You know, I don't want people to start playing out clips. We'll waste a lot of time.
10 seconds.
No, we've heard you. You made a claim. You made a claim. You made a claim. You made a claim of. We're not getting into playing clips and all. Please. He's made a claim. He has made a claim. You have made a claim. You have made a claim, sir, that we have not. We've
Indian
stopped.
government has refused to buy cheaper
Yes.
Russian oil.
He also
ये
issued
US
a
से तेल
clarification.
खरीदेंगे, ये और किसी राज्य से देश से महंगा तेल
Okay.
खरीदेंगे,
Now
लेकिन रशिया से तेल नहीं खरीदेंगे.
let's get a response
The
from
data
this.
speaks for itself.
One by one. Please,
Madhav,
one by
the
one.
data speaks for itself. We are buying 10 million barrels a day from Russia. Data speaks for itself.
Incorrect.
It is not a
Incorrect.
hidden
Here's the data. Here's the
कुछ
data.
नहीं कम
I'll give
किया,
you the exact
लगातार
data.
ले रहे हैं, लगातार ले रहे हैं, कुछ नहीं कम किया. There is no pressure
Here's
that can
the
stop it.
ministry
The
data.
government of India is making a
Madhav, here's the
statement. We
ministry
will
data.
buy oil from
They have
wherever we
reduced
can
oil.
find it
They have
cheaper.
reduced.
Okay.
They have
Our Indian
reduced.
interests are
He's One moment, please, one moment. Yeah.
Just in the previous debate, BJP spokesperson admitted that this data was published by the government of India, which says that
You said that we have stopped. One second. Anmol Pawar, you have said that we have stopped buying oil, right? 1 second, please. Let's not do this.
Right now, India has been buying Russian oil. Is the only country in the world that has consistently been buying Russian oil. What is this nonsense?
194,000 barrels to 110,000 barrels per day.
Okay.
Now the government is
Okay, let Professor
1,000 barrels per day to 1106 barrels per day.
The panel now speak.
This is a 40% reduction in imports from Russia.
I don't know which data you are.
You are citing statistics. Let her give you statistics. Calm down. You made a lot of points.
We are in.
Professor Deepthi Taneja, please.
Seconds.
Deepthi Taneja, please. You made a lot of points.
We are on 15th May today. I'll give you Kepler's every month data is released. This is Kepler's April data. This is not any other you cannot say that this is a country made.
No, let her speak. Now, come on. Anmol, this is not correct. No,
listen to me.
You made your point. No, let her give you a response.
The
please.
data.
No, Deepthi Taneja, please. This is not how we debate. No.
It was 1672. It was 1672,000 from Russia, the oil that we were importing in the 2025-6 year, which was last year April, and now it is 1685, same time period, April month data. And you're talking about the US giving us this. That has happened, sir. Later,
sanctions were removed by US.
And then when the tariffs were imposed, we never reduced Russian oil. When the tariffs were reduced, we never reduced Russian oil. Please give out that data as well.
Here's it. India declines Russian oil under sanctions. Stop, continue on permitted cargoes.
November, December.
11th में दहेज टर्मिनल पोर्ट से रशियन जो वेसल था वो वापस भेजा गया.
Okay.
And now it is in Singapore.
Just September, October, November, December data also.
Your argument, they have repeatedly said. Okay.
He claimed that India has stopped taking Russian oil.
Exactly.
That is false.
Reduced by 60%. Reduced by 60%. I said that reduced by 60%.
First he said
saying that
he has stopped taking Russian oil. Then he said
was the point. You said you stopped buying. That's what you actually said. Now you're changing your statement. Now you are allowed to change the statement.
Zero.
Now you're saying reduce. Now you're saying reduce.
Even then I said stop. Even then I said
okay. You started with you used the word stop. But anyway. Let's play the tape. Vivek Saras wants to come in on this. You want to respond to their point? Because they are saying there is no question of US pressure. India is one of the few countries that continues to import oil from Russia despite whatever pressure it may be facing.
Now the world knows what pressure we are facing from the Americans, Even if you ask anyone, and Dattatreya Hasbole has also said that we should keep our relations with Pakistan. He is the second in command with the RSS. How can you deny that first? लेकिन आज सुनिए आज देश को बधाई दूंगा कि हिंदुस्तान का जो करेंसी है वो वर्ल्ड का सबसे वर्स्ट परफॉर्मिंग करेंसी में आ चुका है और यूएस डॉलर अभी 96 पार कर चुका है. इफ यू कंपेयर आर करेंसी पाकिस्तान के अगेंस्ट हमारा करेंसी जो है 11% कम हुआ है. बांग्लादेश के खिलाफ हमारा करेंसी हिंदुस्तानी करेंसी 12% और श्रीलंका के खिलाफ आज की डेट में हमारी करेंसी 13% नीचे चली गई है. यूएस डॉलर की तो आप बात ही करिए, छोड़ दीजिए. 2014 में 10 सेकंड लूंगा सर, 10 सेकंड, नॉट 6 10 सेकंड 5 इयर्स. मैं किसी के बीच में नहीं बोलता हूं.
बोलिए.
2014 में हमारी जो खुद की प्रोडक्शन थी, क्रूड जो प्रोडक्शन हम कर रहे थे वो हिंदुस्तान को 38% हम खुद सप्लाई कर रहे थे. आज वो घट के 26.5% पे आ गया. तो इसमें क्या हम शाबाशी दें भारतीय जनता पार्टी?
So the first point is that you see, if you compare the rupee versus the Sri Lankan rupee, very interesting. Sri Lankan rupee over the last 10 years, Sri Lankan rupee has fallen drastically. Over the last, if you just look at a 1 year or a 6-month period, that's a ridiculous comparison. Look at these currencies over a long period of time. Look at Indian rupee against Korean won, for instance, over the last 10 years. The Korean won has depreciated against the Indian rupee over the last 10 years. Japanese yen has depreciated against Indian rupee over the last 10 years. So if you look at a long period of time, that's what you come up with. But if you suddenly just focus on a 6 to 12 month period and say, oh, now the Indian equity market is down relative relative to Pakistan. Look at India's equity market versus the world's equity market over the last 12 years. India has been one of the best performing equity markets in the world, and that is why our valuations were extremely high a year ago, and so we've had a correction. To say that in the last 1 year, Pakistan's equity market or currency has done better than us, and therefore Pakistan is a great economy, is ludicrous. Pakistan is on the verge of bankruptcy and has been for the last 12 years and more. So, it barely averted a default on its external debt, and it was rescued at the last moment by Saudi Arabia the last time around. So, Sri Lanka has defaulted. It is a defaulting country. So, comparing with these is ludicrous.
Okay. And the size and the scale of the economy is very different. Let me quickly take it through some of the other points that we have that we are debating in terms of the political aspects of this. In fact, some of the aspects that we were looking at, and this is, of course, when you compare UPA versus NDA when it comes to the fuel price math is concerned. Petrol in June of 2004 was 35.71 rupees. In March of 2014, it was 73.16. The hike there is 37.45, and therefore in percentage terms, 104.9% in 10 years. When you talk about the prices over here of petrol, in March 2014, it was 73.16. In May 2026, 99.77. The hike here is 24.61, and therefore 33.6% hike in 12 years. Look at diesel as well. Similar figures when it comes to diesel. The hike over here, of course, were between UPA and NDA. UPA, of course, it was 22.74 in June 2004, going up to 55.48 in March 2014. Hike of 32.74, 143.9% in 10 years. When it comes to diesel, 55.48 to 90.67, again a hike of 35.19, or is 63.4%. In percentage terms, of course, much less in the past 12 years. VAT on fuel as well. Let's look at the NDA states versus opposition states. In opposition rule states such as Kerala, the VAT on petrol is 26.41, diesel 20.00. In Andhra Pradesh, the VAT is high at 29.06 on petrol, diesel at 21.56 as well. Let's look at other states. In Telangana, the VAT on petrol is 26.93, diesel 19.80. In Rajasthan, the VAT on petrol is 24.73, diesel 14.80. Let's also look at Tamil Nadu. VAT on petrol here is 21.34, diesel 17.57. In Madhya Pradesh, VAT on petrol is 26.70, diesel 16.70. In Karnataka, the VAT on petrol is 22.74, diesel 15.45. In Maharashtra, the VAT on petrol is 24.00, diesel 15.18. So this is, of course, as far as the opposition versus the ruling party argument is concerned. But let me bring in Vikas Gupta. Vikas Gupta, the fact is, if you look at it in percentage terms, during the 10 years of UPA, the percentage growth was much higher when you compare the percentage growth in the last 12 years. That is a figure that is undisputable, isn't it?
Madhav, that's because of the base price. Let's not get into what has happened in last 20 years. Madhav, what is more important for the nation is not comparing figures what was there in 2004. If there were some faults of the Congress, they were pushed out and they were thrown out of the power.
So what is the base price issue?
No,
how will you compare the performance of the UPA and India? What is the basis? You tell me, how will you compare the two governments then?
There's no requirement of any comparison.
Why not?
That's
what politics in India is all about. You talk about your performance and the previous government performance. That's how it works.
Just give me 2 minutes. Just give me 2 minutes. What is today is important is that the people of the country wants to know from the government that what is the roadmap ahead. We had a very seasoned banker in Uday Kotak. He's spelling out that there is a major shock that the economy is going to face, and if we have economists here who says the other way around, I think I'm going to believe Uday Kotak rather than any other academic.
Uday Kotak is
what is most important, Madhav, just 30 seconds, then I rest my case to you. What is required by the people of this country is that what is the roadmap ahead? You tell me one thing, in a country where the public transport is negligible, is near zero, how do you expect people to travel? Even if you raise the prices of petrol and say it doesn't affect me, but ask any of your staff member, if you don't have a public transport, how will they come from their home to the studio? Tell me. Okay. What is the roadmap of the government?
I get your larger point. I won't say public transport is zero. There is public transport, but yes, it definitely needs improvement, sir. And let me put that question across to Siddharth Yadav. 2 points. when he says what's coming at us in the future, I think it's a relevant point because the gap is, I think, about 12 rupees a litre, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to petrol. The hike is of 3 rupees. So where will the rest of the 9 rupees come from? Is the government going to continue to subsidize it? Yes, will there be another hike? I think that's a relevant question. And point number 2, if you want people to give up their cars, you have to really, really invest in public infrastructure, because infrastructure in Delhi may be okay, but when it comes to, you know, the outer cities or the satellite cities, Gurgaon, Noida, etc., it's not yet up to the mark. And that's
only
a fact.
I'm
arguing your point.
Metro,
I'm arguing your point. Let him answer that.
I
have just asked your question, sir. Let him answer that.
Madhav, I really don't want to draw a comparison, otherwise my learned friend would get agitated. But the fact of the matter is that we have tripled the metro cities in our country in the past 10 years. This is the fact of the matter. How many cities in our country had metro in 2014 and how many of them have today? You know, I don't even want to get into that. The real question is, it's a global crisis. There's no denying about it. The Prime Minister is making appeal. All of us collectively have responsibilities to do. We have passed on little burden onto the consumers. We have requested the consumers of the country, the countrymen, to consume less. We have requested to buy less of gold, use less of oil. All of us together, if I think, you know, work in a very cohesive manner, I do not think,
I'll give you a chance, please, let's not interrupt each other.
I do not understand why this goonism has to happen on a show. It's a very sensitive issue. I think when all of us would go together, this is a crisis we can manage. We are very actively, as a government, we are very actively engaging with parallel governments. The kind of MOUs that are signed today, the kind of investment that we are drawing in at this hour, when the entire world is in stress, the kind of MOUs for our strategic petroleum reserves that we are making, I think it is keeping ourselves in safer hands. The overall economics of the country is also doing well. We are a current account deficit is low. It's not what it was in 2013. The forex of our country today is not what it was in 2013.
But yet,
so we have
let me put that question to him. The $38 billion that we've reduced in terms of forex reserves, if the government wants to build that back through a little bit of economy, a little bit of smart spending, as they call it. They don't want to use the word austerity because that has its own connotations. What's wrong with such a move?
I tell you, this all for the future. Why they haven't done so far? Mr. Yadav, these memorandums are all for the future, the storage is for the future. Why haven't you done it yet? One small thing.
What should they have done? Watch one second. Let's speak specifics now, not in generalities. Mr. Pullara, what should they have done specifically?
They should have had a more coordinated, highly technocratic approach to petroleum.
And doing what? What would they have done with the technocratic approach?
They've done nothing.
What should they have done? I'm asking a specific policy point. Don't answer. You're arguing this. Please don't speak in generalities. Tell us 2 things that they should have done specifically.
First and foremost, we should have diversified our sources. They were not prepared.
Done that.
They were not prepared. Number 2, we should have had alternate energy. When I mentioned Pakistan, I'm talking about solar energy in Pakistan. They outpaced India. What were you doing?
Solar energy is outpaced India. Is that factually correct?
Madhav, just 10 seconds. 3 gigawatt of solar energy production in 2014, 140 gigawatts today. What are you speaking about? You don't want to go with the facts. The problem today with the opposition is you want to ignore anything and everything and just batter the government making your political points scoring.
But this is not how I will ask one important question. Just a second. When crude touched $147 per barrel in 2008, when there was a global energy shock, petrol prices in India were still around 50 rupees a litre. The point is that today, even when crude is far below that 147 level, we are still paying 100 rupees a litre. What explains that?
Yeah. So it's a very, very valid question, Madhav, and exactly that is what I was wanting to come on to. Then you showed various state levels. This is the need of the hour that the GST Council has been asking again and again, that this should be the GST, the state VAT should also be brought under the GST ambit. So that is the need of the hour, to bring it in the GST ambit, and then a central GST rate is decided so that that is rationalized for the entire country. And then you, answering those questions that you were talking about, I'm giving you pure facts only, that what has the government done so far? What can the government do to mitigate this problem in future, both short term, long term? So what has the government done right now is that this special additional excise duty, which was rupees 13, has been brought down to rupees 10, rupees 3, which is what it was, a 10 rupees cut. We still have the window with the central excise, because the state is not something, with especially the non-NDA rule states, that is not something that the government can control right now. So we still have the window in that. Then coming on to forex, 27th February figure was we had 116 $16 billion dollars worth of forex, 716 billion, which has now come down to 690 billion because the government has released so that the pressure on the rupee is not as much. Then the import duties have been hiked from 6% to 15% because austerity measures mein to people started doing a lot of politics, unfortunately, which was not required. Just to give you the number there, if the gold imports just drop by 50%, that leads to a saving of almost $24 billion per annum, which is equal to the entire NASA's annual budget. So this is the numbers that we're talking about. Then in the long term, the government can still release more forex. We are very comfortable there.
These are moves that we need to look at, particularly non-renewable forms of energy that are currently being used. Perhaps we need to switch to renewable forms, but we'll have to leave it there. Completely out of time. Siddharth Yadav, Deepti Taneja, Dr. P.K. Basu, Advocate Vikas Gupta, Anmol Pawar, Vivek Silas and Dr. Pula Rao. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us on this edition of the National Debate.